Hello, and welcome to the final episode of Daily Chess Analysis in April. This is episode 30, and here's the game that we played earlier today. It was a Sicilian, so e4 and c5, and he played the wing Gambit. And actually, somebody had played this against me maybe when I was 1300, and I lost this game. And I noticed from then till now, one of the differences is that I understand what the move is trying to do. Before, when I saw a weird move, I would freak out and then just playing terrible moves. I think I ended up playing something like b6, defending my pawn, which is ridiculous. When somebody gambits, for me anyway, when in doubt, accept it. I pretty much accept every gambit line that comes my way. I'm thinking about the gambits that I face. I face the Budapest Gambit, the Smith-Morra Gambit. Yeah, I just take them all, basically. It's one of the critical tests of a gambit. Basically, if you're giving up a pawn, they can take it and hold on to the material and then win the game with their extra pawn. You don't hear of those gambits because they're just bad moves. Those are mistakes. Gambits that are played, like the Queen's Gambit, for example, is one of the most studied gambits in chess. It's played because trying to maintain the pawn carries with it some amount of risk. And so Black doesn't equalize so quickly if he takes the material. The wing gambit, what's the idea behind it? Well, this pawn was stopping his pawn from going to d4. That was what my c pawn was doing there. And that explains the first moves by Black, right? e5 is another move that's normal. So he's distracting my pawn from defending the center to not defending the center. And the most played move here is a3, just kind of continuing with that theme, dragging my pawn further away. And if I take, you'll develop your bishop, probably, and that hinders my development. I'll probably have to fianchetto my bishop, and I'll have to, it'll be a little bit of a struggle. This similar idea happens in the Benko Gambit. And here, along with the Benko, I don't fully accept. I don't take the second pawn. In this case, I just defended my pawn with my bishop, and I took central space. So the reason I played c5 was to stop d4, and now I'm playing e5, which stops d4. So it seems like his kind of experiment so far, didn't really go his way. And you can see white here, or black here, actually has the advantage and can push for something. So a captures b4 and bishop captures b4. So I developed a piece as well. And I talked about this in the game, that actually this might be a good device for him to, get a good center. So I have to be a little bit careful. He played f4, which is not a good move. I just take another pawn, so now I'm 2 pawns up. And he plays knight f3. Regular, he's trying to develop, although castling this way doesn't make a lot of sense. Normally you have an f-pawn somewhere that can sort of help defend, or at least it's really strong because the bishop on c1 defends the f4 pawn, but in this case you have no f-pawn. And here I made a decided error. Here it would have been better to play d5. It seems kind of odd to break open the center when nobody's developed anything, but he just doesn't have any serious checks against me. He has that. And then I'll just block with my bishop like I was going to anyway. And it's just fine. Knight e7 is just a little bit more of a timid response than is necessary. And the sample line was d5, ed5, now knight e7. So right piece placement, I should distract from the center first. He'd play c3, bishop d6, c4, defending the pawn, and castles. And here you can see that black is up by 1.3, which is what you'd expect, being up a pawn. Knight e7, it's still fine. It just doesn't take full advantage of the position. He played c3, a great move. I played bishop d6, a must. He played e5, a move I expected, and my bishop sat back on c7. So my bishop ventured out all the way over here to take this pawn, and I've had to spend some time to get it back safely. So at least he has something for the pawn. Actually, 2 pawns. He doesn't have anything for the f pawn, but he has something for the b pawn. And he plays d4, right? That was the whole purpose of my c pawn advance, was to stop this. But he successfully, moved my b pawn and then also moved my e pawn. So now he gets d4 red. This center is actually kind of formidable. I mean, he does have the weak, c3 pawn, the base of the pawn chain. Okay. And here I wanted to collapse his center, but I thought I don't want to collapse it when there's, checks that can come my way. And so I castled. But the checks aren't anything to worry about. If I play d6, which just properly, it's like a hypermodern opening basically, but without me trying to do a hypermodern opening. I played moves that were directly challenging the center, which is in classical style. He removed those pawns, But now that he has a big center, which kind of just came out of the position, now I can destroy the center with moves that I wanted to play anyway. But I castled. Bishop captures f4. And now I played d6. But, I mean, there's a hanging piece, so why not develop with tempo? This not only lets my queen out, but also gets my knight to a more active square and puts more pressure on the e5 pawn. So d6 was just a little bit too early. If knight g6, I was looking, what if he tries this, right? Trying to attack my queen, and f6 looks a little bit dangerous. It's actually just nothing to worry about. Even though my king gets opened, his bishop isn't very happy, and the computer actually says the best move is to go all the way back. This would be scarier for me to play, but the computer doesn't have any problems with it. So I played d6, bishop c4, developing. And here I had a critical choice whether to go ahead with my plan and take here or to pin the knight. Because he moved his bishop, and normally the bishop will go to e2, to break the pin. But here he moved the bishop, so that tempted me even more to pin. And I played bishop g4, which evaporates pretty much the entirety of my advantage. Because he can play e captures d6. And after I take, he could take here with my queen. So I couldn't take the knight, which was the plan. So I'd have to take here, bishop d6, queen d6. And at the end of this, he can castle. I don't have anything really to show for it. He just has, two relatively central pawns. I have two outer pawns. I'm only one pawn up, but that pawn is this f pawn here, which is not going to queen. There's two pawns and kings over here. So my advantage is, quite small here. And my knight's undefended. He has a good rook, already staring at my side of the board. So it's just a bad move order choice, basically, to go bishop g4. Much better is to go d captures. And I was afraid of knight here because then I can't play my pin. But I really don't need to play the pin. I need to let that go. And bishop here is a great move. Putting pressure on one of his best defended pieces, and also just helping my development to grow better. And it kind of halts his pawns for the time being. I went further in that line, but it's not important. But in this game, I went bishop g4. He castled, which is not a good move. And now I took in the center, finally. After I knew that I'd secured this knight here in place. Bishop captures e5. Bishop captures e5. You got to take with the pawn. And here I was excited because I knew that he was going to have pawn weaknesses. So I took, he took, I took, he took. And I was like, look at these pawns. These are awful, right? I'm just going to be able to win because I'm, positionally better and up a pawn. And the computer somewhat agrees with me. I mean, there was a better way to go about it, but this is fine. I'm +1 here, plus 1.3. And climbing. And here I wanted to attack the weaknesses, right? Because the problem that I have a lot is I'll have these weaknesses, I'll provoke these problems with this position, and then I won't take advantage of them. So I went straight for it, knight g6, which is kind of unnecessary. I should develop my pieces which aren't developed and let my other pieces in the game. Knight b to c6 does a great thing. It defends, my pawn over here, but also it lets my rook in the game, which is great. I went kind of deeper into that line just to see, but I played knight g6, which you can see I was winning by like 1.5, and I'm winning by maybe like 0.8, 0.9. Okay, he pushes the pawn as expected, takes. I have to move my king, and he puts his bishop back. Now I finally get the message and play knight c6. I don't mind if takes. He has weak pawn. So he plays bishop e4. Okay, I'm still going a little bit wrong. I'm not developing my pieces that haven't moved yet. I've moved this knight approximately 1,000,000 times. Here he plays king g2, which defends the f3 pawn I was attacking. And here I go wrong with rook f to d8. It would have just been better to try to double against this guy. But also the rook here actually defends the b7 pawn and just defends the second rank in general. This knight has a job to do, and I can relieve the knight of its job. So this knight can go around and start attacking pieces. Okay, knight a3 developing, also defending his rook. I played g6, stopping this bishop from attacking the h7 pawn and also giving my king space to move. Knight b5, which double attacks this pawn. So I took, he takes back. And here I had a few errors. So a6, I should be pushing a5 and just going all the way. His knight wants to move. And so by kicking it out, I'm just helping it do the thing that it wanted to do. I basically gave him a free tempo. This pawn's destiny is the back rank to make a queen. And so by taking 2 steps to go here instead of just 1, I'm just giving him a free move that he wants to play anyway. After knight d6, I had a blunder, rook d8. And rook d8's a blunder because, well, let me tell you why I thought it wasn't a blunder. So I saw there was this fork, but I was like, oh, I can just take it back. But the sequence goes bishop c6, bc6, and f4. And now if I move my knight, I get forked. If I don't move my knight, I lose the knight. So here it's just kind of over. Yeah, here it's just over, which is real sad. I would have been down like 4 there. So rook d2, rook d8, not the best. Better, which is the more important part, is knight to d8, which defends the b7 pawn at least once. And if he wants to trade, that's fine, and pick up the pawn. My a pawn is just too fast, basically. My a pawn already has my rook behind it, so I'm a tempo ahead in that regard. And my knight's very active and is stopping his other pawn. So this would be a very superior position. Okay, bishop captures c6, bc6. He didn't play f4. He played rook d2, defending his knight. And I blundered a second time. So I said, oh, he can't fork me. Let's get out of the fork, right? I don't want to get forked. And so I played king g7, which is the only other square my king can go to that gets checked. And after knight f5, I mean, is it an exchange that I'm losing? And I can't hold everything together, so I also lose in this position. Yeah, terrible. After rook d2, king g7, he didn't take it. He played f4, so now I'm +3. It's basically he wins or I win, because neither of us played very well. And in this position, I played knight f7, saying, hey, let's trade knights. We trade rooks instead, which made me kind of happy. Although knights are tricky, I much rather this would have been rooks. It would have been more straightforward to win. Even though some endings are a draw if it's a rook and pawn endgame, except for in this case, I had this outside pawn. So I'll have to, basically his rook's going to have to go over here, and my king can do other stuff. I played knight d6, getting my knight in the game. King f3, king f6, knight b3, h5. Okay, he played h3, which is really confusing to me. If he wants to save his tempos, like wants to save his moves, he shouldn't use them now. h3 is kind of claiming that I'm in zugzwang and that I can't make a move. But that's just really not the case. I could advance with knight to b7 and then push these pawns, basically. That'd be a good strat to have. Instead, I played knight b5, attacking this guy. c4, knight d6, c5, knight b7. So my knight ended up back here, but his pawn just got to advance for free. And I consider this an improvement because this pawn is closer to my king, so it's going to be easier for my king to attack it. When in actuality, there's no reason to let this pawn move forward. He played king e4, and I thought he was going to get in, but the square's attacked, so he obviously can't. So there's no reason for me to move my king in here and just get forked and then pulled to the side. Much better is just to play a5. This pawn's very quick, and he's going to have to deal with it. Meanwhile, there's other pawns over here that I'll be able to take, which is why it's so winning. And just to show you, because I didn't have any confidence in this at first. If he tries knight d4, trying to go after this pawn, we take his pawn, of course. He's got to go back, and a4. And this pawn's kind of too fast for him to try to take this. If he tries to take it, obviously we march the pawn further forward. He has to go back to try to stop it, and our king gets in. And you just have too much stuff to deal with at once, and knights are short-range pieces. So knight c2 makes sense. a2, knight d4 check, my king goes back, knight c2, knight e6, and you got to make a move here. The computer's going back and forth, and it said h4, but that obviously lets my king in. So I don't know what I would choose for him, honestly. There's not a lot of good choices. One issue that he has is there's sometimes I can play this move and this move, which locks his knight out of the game. So he's got to be a little bit careful. But this is just super winning. I played king e6 instead, getting the opposition, but falling for a fork. The fork doesn't win a pawn. So h4 again, saying I don't have any moves, but obviously it lets my king in if he gives me the opportunity. And here I played a5. I have a passed pawn. I'm going to use it. I defended instead of... I defended this pawn instead of defending over here. f5 makes sense. Knight c6 first. And now we take. And after king captures f5, I'm winning by 1.8. And it's going to go up from here because it's a clear win. Here I played a4. King d6 makes a little bit more sense. He can't check me from either of these squares. And here my opponent blundered, allowing me to trade knights. And with knights, it's more tricky and it's harder, and there's forks all over the place. Like if he could spawn his knight over here, that'd be, a check with a fork. Obviously, the knight's defending, but you gotta watch out for these things. But after king g5, I can just trade knights, and now the game's just over because this pawn's too fast. You don't have a knight that can get over there. So that was the game. Here's the report of the game. I like this key moments section here. So you can see I was winning. I was doing very well. There was the thing where we were blundering back and forth at this point, which is why he was winning, I was winning, he was winning. But then I went back into an end game, and I ended up winning that as well. So that's good. It wasn't necessarily the smoothest game ever. I got 90.8% accuracy. My opponent, or he got 90.8. I got 85.4 because those blunders with the rook and the knight and losing the exchange. We still came out in the end, which is good. And you can see over here, accuracy with the queen needs to be improved, and rook moves need to be improved. So that was the Sicilian defense, the wing gambit, martial variation. I hope you enjoyed this series of videos in April, analyzing my games and playing my games. And I hope you stay Turkish. Thank you so much, and good night.